Yes, Kapil, we can start. We are live on YouTube now.
First of all, my sincere apologies to Dr. Supanta Bhattacharya, sir.
Absolutely okay.
Extremely sorry to keep you waiting.
No, fine.
Yeah, there was a bit of confusion. As you know, the circumstances, a few of our resource persons have tested positive.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear.
Hospitalized, and the person who was supposed to present this evening, he too is not keeping well. So that was the reason that we were, myself and Karthik were a bit confused. So
right.
Keep you waiting.
No problem.
I welcome you all to this morning session of MA Part 1 first semester classes, which are being engaged online in collaboration by the 4 colleges: Rajkumar Keval Ramani Mahila Mahavidyalaya, Nagpur, Mahila Mahavidyalaya Nagpur, J.M. Patel College of Arts, Commerce and Science, Bhandara, Vasantrao Naik Government Institute of Arts and Social Sciences, Nagpur. The resource person for today's lecture, which will be conducted on Antony and Cleopatra, a historical play by Shakespeare, is Dr. Supanta Bhattacharya. Sir was a gold medalist in Masters in M.A.English and was a university topper at MPhil. When it comes to the theatre, he is a well-known figure and he has acted in over 150 plays in various languages: English, Hindi, Bangla and Marathi. Sir has participated in Bonbita School Quiz and was a quiz master for 5 national inter-university quizzes. Conducted numerous inter-college, inter-school and inter-institutional quizzes. Sir is editor of Poetry Journal, Rhythmics, and has won All India Poetry Prize conducted by British Council and Poetry Society of India. Many of his poems are published, and he has chaired national, international conferences and with paper presentation in the various conferences. Sir has completed a UGC project on Rabindranath Tagore and has 2 volumes of translations of Mahesh Elkunj sir's plays published by Oxford University Press. So on behalf of the organizers and the participating students, I welcome sir to this session and hand over the mic to him for further proceedings.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singhal, and a huge thanks to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to address the students on a topic which I dearly love, that is Shakespearean drama. So good morning, friends. Good morning, everybody. Wish all of you a very happy Bard Day. Coincidentally, today is the birth anniversary of William Shakespeare. Also his death anniversary. He died on his birthday. And as you all know, we are celebrating this day as World Book Day. And as a student reminded me yesterday, this is also World English Language Day. All right. So without further ado, let's try to understand this very interesting, very intriguing, very complex, multi-layered play, which is a Roman tragedy, Antony and Cleopatra. It's a part of the 4 Roman tragedies which Shakespeare wrote: Titus Andronicus, Coriolanus, Julius Caesar, and this, Antony and Cleopatra. Now, why so much interest in Roman culture and history? You might well ask. As you all know, students who have studied the B. Prasad textbook, Background to the Study of English Literature, you'll remember that during the Middle Ages, Greek and Roman drama fell into obscurity in Europe, and the new dramatic tradition revolved around the medieval church. If you remember, the miracle plays, the mystery plays, morality plays, all right, they were all ecclesiastical drama. They were basically religious drama. So drama kind of followed that particular theological, liturgical route. And during the Renaissance, however, the classical plays were revived. Okay, and the greatest impact on British drama, English drama during the Renaissance came from Rome, not so much from Greece. The Roman playwrights were translated into English, and the Greek playwrights somehow were not so popular. So, the influence of William Shakespeare and his contemporary playwrights, they came from the classical world, particularly the Roman world, okay, and also the Roman theatrical tradition. And the Latin writers influenced these playwrights tremendously, and they borrowed a lot of content and stylistic techniques from these writers. Okay, because there was a lot of similarity between the Roman culture, the Roman traditions, and the Elizabethans. Okay, the Romans, Shakespeare always presents in his plays as very conscientious, very well cultured, all right, well mannered and civilized people. And as you know, in the 16th century, Shakespeare's England was highly nationalistic and imperial. And Shakespeare's Rome resembled Elizabeth's England in many different ways. Okay, Rome was seen by Shakespeare and his contemporaries as interpreted by the Roman writers like Virgil, Ovid, okay, the playwrights Seneca, and Rome had a lot of sophistication. Rome had very civilized values, but Rome also had hunger. Rome also had invasions. Rome had betrayal, rebellion, adultery. Okay, you name it. Even negative values were very, very predominant in Rome. So basically, Rome was ancient Rome as viewed by Shakespeare and his followers. Had a lot of imperfections. It had a lot of innate corruption, and the writers of this age found a lot of similarities between the court of Queen Elizabeth I and the Republic of Julius Caesar, Octavius Caesar, and others. Okay, so the political, the socio-political, cultural scenario was very similar between Elizabethan England and ancient Rome, okay, Caesarian Rome. And palace intrigue was not lacking, and theatre was very popular. Another similarity. Theatre was very popular as a kind of a political manipulation of the masses in both these historical epochs. So, of Shakespeare's numerous interactions with the classical civilization, the maximum expedition, the maximum imaginative expedition by Shakespeare were in ancient Rome. And as I told you already, 4 plays, all right, 4 plays are set in this era. And this quartet, Titus Andronicus, Coriolanus, Julius Caesar, and Antony and Cleopatra, they are often called the Roman plays or the Roman tragedies. Even in other plays, for instance, in Henry IV, Macbeth, all right, there are lots of references to Rome. Now, if we look at Shakespeare's biography, although most of the records have perished, it is quite likely that Shakespeare must have attended the local grammar school, all right, which was a few streets from his birthplace in Stratford-upon-Avon. And there, at this grammar school, Shakespeare would have been exposed to a humanist curriculum steeped in classical literature, both in original Latin as well as in translation. And journal entries and contemporary records show that in the upper forms, in the higher grades, boys, education was of course only exclusively for the boys. Boys were required to talk exclusively in Latin. And so Shakespeare, although Ben Jonson, if you remember, in the first folio, the introduction, he referred to Shakespeare as a man of small Latin and less Greek. Okay, but I'm quite sure by the time Shakespeare left school, he must have known as much of the Latin language, of the Latin language and Roman culture as a British graduate today, and he must have been quite experienced at speaking Latin as well, right? And Greek probably would have been Shakespeare's Greek would have been less accomplished, but it definitely could not have been small. So, what topics did Shakespeare and his school fellows read in school? All right, he must have studied works by Erasmus. Okay, he must have studied works by Cicero. All right, Cicero's speeches, the translations and the originals, they were very, very popular because they were considered necessary for public speaking. And poets like Ovid, all right, Ovid's Amoris or Ovid's Metamorphoses, okay, and definitely he would have read a writer who was the presiding god, who was followed by and worshipped by both the university wits as well as the commercial mainstream writers, and that was the Roman Seneca. Okay, so naturally, when at the peak of their political prosperity, at the peak of their political success under Elizabeth I, especially after the defeat of the Spanish Armada, people started, the Englishmen, they started viewing themselves as descendants of the Romans. As all of you know, Julius Caesar conquered England without much of a fight, I think in 43 BC, and that famous Latin declaration by Caesar, Vini, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. It was a very easy conquest. And for many years after that, the Romans continued to hold sway over England. And a lot of attitudes, a lot of customs were inherited by Elizabeth's Englishmen from the Romans. So naturally, the Elizabethan Englishmen and women, they felt a kind of an affinity, a kind of a moral, intellectual, psychological affinity with ancient Rome. And many playwrights during this period, they were writing plays on Roman history. Many Shakespearean critics today, they consider Antony and Cleopatra to be a kind of a sequel to Julius Caesar. And chronologically, the play Antony and Cleopatra, it is an extension of Julius Caesar, although, mind you, stylistically, how shall I put this, and thematically, all right, Antony and Cleopatra is a much, much more mature work than Julius Caesar. But still, if you read Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra in succession, you'll realize that basically Antony and Cleopatra takes the story forward. What happens after the death of Julius Caesar? All right, that story is carried forward. In fact, there is this Bengali filmmaker whose name is Srijit. All right, he recently, a couple of years ago, he made a film called Zulfikar. And Zulfikar is a film based on these two plays. It's a Bengali adaptation of Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra. Okay, both the events run in succession, and what happens in the film is it is shown that Antony begins an affair with Cleopatra even while she is a mistress of Julius Caesar. Now, I don't know if you are aware of this bit of Roman history, but when Caesar arrived in Alexandria, Egypt, in the year 48 BC, he found himself caught up, embroiled in a dynastic death struggle between the 21-year-old Queen Cleopatra and her husband brother. All right, Cleopatra had married her younger brother Ptolemy. All right, so there was this political struggle for the throne between Ptolemy and Cleopatra. And Cleopatra, I'll talk about this later. Through Cleopatra, Shakespeare introduced a new kind of heroine in literature. Okay, a heroine who's extremely assertive to the point of being aggressive, a heroine who knows her mind, and a heroine who's definitely not cowed down by chauvinism, by patriarchy. So what Cleopatra did is she smuggled herself in Caesar's presence, rolled up in a carpet. Another play that I would highly recommend is George Bernard Shaw's Caesar and Cleopatra. All right, students who are interested in this episode between Antony and Cleopatra should also read what happened before. Actually, it is said that Cleopatra had wooed and seduced three of the most successive, most powerful men in the world. Okay, one was, of course, Julius Caesar, and the other was Mark Antony. All right, Marcus Antonius, as the Romans would have called him. And the third was, even before Julius Caesar, she had seduced Pompey when he arrived in Egypt. Okay, so three of the absolutely omnipotent men of the ancient world, they had Queen Cleopatra as their paramour and consort. So Cleopatra, she was sieged by the army of her brother. So what she did was she rolled herself into a carpet, and that carpet was carried to Caesar as a gift. And when the carpet was unrolled, out came this queen, the young 21-year-old girl, Cleopatra. And then, of course, they had a torrid affair, and she got herself pregnant. And a son was born to them called Caesarion. And with Caesar's help, she defeated her brother Ptolemy, killed him, and then ascended to the throne. And then, after having secured herself on Egypt's throne, Cleopatra followed Caesar to Rome. And this was a scandal. The whole city was agog. All right, tongues were wagging. Rumor mills, they were churning overtime. And it was said, it was rumored that Caesar planned to move the capital, the seat of empire, from Rome to Alexandria. All right, and he planned to marry Cleopatra, and he aimed to proclaim her the mistress of the world. Then, of course, 44 BC appeared, and on the Ides of March, all such speculation were silenced bloodily and permanently. Caesar was assassinated, and his assassins, his murderers, the conspirators, they proclaimed the restoration of the Roman Republic. Now, Cleopatra realized that her life was endangered. This was no time to linger in Rome, and she rushed back to Egypt. And there, as civil war began in Rome between the supporters of Caesar, led by Octavius Caesar, Caesar's grandnephew, Julius Caesar's grandnephew, and his close friend and protege, Marcus Antonius, all right, or Mark Antony, as we know in the English-speaking world. Civil war started between these two groups. Cleopatra stayed in Egypt and watched the proceedings. So Caesar's assassins, you know their names, all right, Casca, Cassius, Brutus, all right, they were unable to win Italy to their cause because everybody condemned them. The general public was completely against the assassination. So not finding much support, the assassins fled to the east. And meanwhile, Rome was placed under martial law. And three people, a triumvirate, all right, three most prominent Caesarians, they were called Caesarians, the followers of Caesar. They took over the administration. The first was, of course, our friend, the hero of this play, Mark Antony, who had a reputation as a playboy, but then he displayed a combination of flamboyance and great tactical skills. All of you remember that famous speech, Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, and how he overpowers, how he completely overturns public opinion against the assassination after Marcus Brutus's speech. Okay, so one of the triumvirate was Mark Antony. Okay, then there was Marcus Lepidus. Marcus Lepidus was an official deputy to Julius Caesar and a staunch loyalist of Caesar. And the third member of the triumvirate was a young boy, a 20-year-old boy. Okay, the young Octavian, Caesar's great nephew and adopted heir. Octavian would later become Octavius Caesar, and much later he would become probably the greatest Caesar known in history, Augustus Caesar. Okay, now 2 years have passed. Okay, 2 years have passed. In 42 BC, Antony and Octavian together outside the Macedonian city of Philippi, the two of them win this great battle, and the army of Caesar's assassins is completely destroyed. Cassius and Brutus both commit suicide, and now the entire Roman Empire is split up amongst these two. Marcus Lepidus, the third member of the triumvirate, is sidelined. All right, he's given a small kingdom in Africa, and the rest of it is gobbled up by these two, Octavius Caesar and Antony. And Octavian, who returns to Rome, receives the western part of the Roman Empire. Now, although this gives him mastery of the capital, he's now a master of the city of Rome, it is also something of a poisoned gift. Okay, Italy was in complete turmoil. Pompey's son, Sextus Pompeius, had now established himself as the master of Sicily and the admiral of 250 ships. So he began to choke Rome. He began to throttle Rome. All right, capturing all the Roman ships that were trying to arrive in Rome. So the more the Romans starved, the more unpopular Octavian became. The eastern part of the empire was taken over by Antony, Mark Antony. And Mark Antony was having a great time in the east. Okay, and as I told you, Mark Antony was a party guy. Okay, he loved to have a great time. All right, he loved food, he loved drink, and of course, he loved women. Okay, so he, in the year 41 BC, Mark Antony became aware of the the tremendous the beauty of Cleopatra. People kept bringing him stories about how beautiful and how seductive and how utterly alluring she was. So in 41 BC, he summoned Cleopatra to his headquarters. And the Queen of Egypt, she arrived on a huge barge. Okay, I'll talk about it later, which also is parodied by Eliot in The Wasteland. So the Queen of Egypt saunters into the harbor, into the port, using silver oars and golden filigree work on the ships, and drawn by hundreds of pullers, all right, hundreds of laborers who kind of were drawing a chariot, and Antony was tremendously impressed. Okay, the tables were now turned. The conqueror has become the conquered. Cleopatra was a very good student of male nature. She knew that with her beauty and with her charms, she can overcome the resistance of any male. And she knew Antony was basically very ambitious. He's a man of appetites. And she had correctly calculated that the best way to win Antony's heart was with visuals, with spectacles. And as was his plan right from the beginning, Antony quickly made Cleopatra his mistress and began a torrid affair, all right, an affair that was the talk of the town, and spent a delightful time with her in Alexandria. So as with Caesar, so now with Mark Antony, Cleopatra quickly became pregnant. And she had given only one son to Caesar. Here she gave Mark Antony a pair of twins. And now it began to be whispered amongst Antony's enemies and even his friends that Antony will never return to Rome anymore. Now he's more of an Egyptian. He's become native, or he's gone native. Okay, instead of being a Roman, he's now become a complete Egyptian. At this point, Shakespeare begins his play. Okay, the play picks up exactly where Julius Caesar left off, right? And the Rome is now ruled by these three: Emil Lepidus, who of course rules over a small part of the kingdom; Octavius Caesar in the west; and Mark Antony in the east. So now Octavius repeatedly calls Mark Antony back to Rome because he can't tackle the Sicilian enemy. He can't tackle Pompey's son, on his own. So he needs Mark Antony's brains, and he needs Mark Antony's soldiers, his army. Okay, but in spite of repeated summons to return to Rome and attend to his political responsibilities, Mark Antony chooses to ignore these summons. Okay, and he's pursuing his delights and his pleasures and his desires. And in the very opening scene, Mark Antony, the triple pillar of the world, has now been transformed into a strumpet's fool. A strumpet is something like a whore, something like a prostitute. All right, so he has become the jester, the court jester of a whore, is what his followers say. And right from the start, as you read the play, you see a very interesting thing. Shakespeare establishes a thematic contrast between Rome and Egypt. And that represents two completely contrasting worldviews and value systems. Rome represents duty, all right? Rome represents rationality. Rome represents the practical world of politics. As opposed to this, Egypt, as embodied by its Queen Cleopatra, Egypt represents sensual pleasure. Egypt represents physical appetites. Egypt represents revelry. Okay, Edward Said, if you remember, no, you haven't come to Said yet in first year. Edward Said, the famous post-colonial critic, he would say that this representation of the East is actually a construct. But let's not bring theory into our lecture today. Okay, but there's this wonderful book by Edward Said, which you'll have to read, called Orientalism. So in the mind of the Western intellectual, the Western writer, this is what the East represented, a world of appetites and senses. So the tragedy of the play, Antony and Cleopatra, originates in the division between these two worldviews, the Western and the Eastern, Roman and Egyptian. Okay, and it is represented in the two major movements of the play. One, Antony abandons Cleopatra and Egypt for Rome, and eventually he returns to Cleopatra and Rome. And the tragedy of the play arrives from the conflict between these two actions. And in the play, there's a very interesting character, Enobarbus. Enobarbus functions in the play as Antony's conscience. Okay. So Antony learns that his wife, Fulvia, who started a rebellion against Octavius, has died. And Sextus Pompey, the son of Pompey the Great, is claiming his right to power by bothering Octavius on the seas. So he now resolves to return to Rome and take up his responsibilities, his duties there. Now, this tremendously displeases Cleopatra, and they have a lovers' quarrel. There's an exchange of insults and promises of love and jealous recriminations, and ultimately there's a mutual awareness between the two, mutual awareness amongst both of them of Antony's dilemma. Okay, this is again something you'll notice in Julius Caesar. Brutus, he was caught between these two attitudes, personal loyalty and public good. All right, whether he should kill Julius Caesar or not. Julius Caesar was a great friend of Brutus, but Caesar had to be eliminated to save Rome. So he was caught in this pincer between private loyalty and public responsibility. And the same happens here. Mark Antony is conflicted. Mark Antony is torn apart between his personal desires and his political national responsibilities. And Antony there's some great poetry, probably of all the four Roman tragedies, even more than Julius Caesar and Coriolanus. Titus Andronicus, of course, is a very mature play. You wouldn't really enjoy reading it. It's a very bloodthirsty and a very macabre kind of a play. Okay, more John Webster than Shakespeare. But Antony and Cleopatra contains some tremendous poetry, some absolutely best poetry by Shakespeare. So, when it is decided that Antony will have to go to Rome, this is how Antony comforts Cleopatra. He says, "Our separation so abides and flies, that thou residing here goes yet with me, and I, hence fleeting, here remains with thee." Okay, this is how the first act ends. Now, in the second act, we begin in the house of Pompey. And Pompey is aware of the weakness of the three triumvirs, and especially Antony. And he hopes that Antony wouldn't return to Rome. He'll be distracted. He'll continue to be distracted by Cleopatra. And he says, "Let witchcraft join with beauty, lust with both, tie up the libertine in a field of feasts." In the house of Lepidus, there's a quarrel between Antony and Octavius. Antony has arrived in Rome, and immediately there's a quarrel between Antony and Octavius over Fulvia's rebellion. Why did Antony's wife rebel against Octavius? And Antony's irresponsibility. Octavius accuses him of being under the hypnotic charm of Cleopatra, and he calls him irresponsible, calls him all kinds of names, and he threatens to break the bond between them. Octavius is General Agrippa. He comes up with a brilliant plan. He suggests that Antony marry Octavius's sister, Octavia. Now that he's a widower, there's nothing to stop him marrying Octavia. And Antony agrees to the marriage. All right, it's a political necessity for the good of Rome, and the quarrel can be patched up in this very romantic way. After Antony and Octavius leave to visit Octavia, Enobarbus tells Agrippa and Maecenas, another follower of Octavius, about Egypt. And this is a brilliant scene where Enobarbus is describing the splendors of Egypt and Cleopatra's remarkable attraction. Messina remarks sadly that now that Octavius is getting married to, now that Antony is getting married to Octavia, now Antony must leave her utterly. That is what he thinks, all right? But Enobarbus knows Antony better, okay? He's a cynic. In the play, he comes across as a cynic, but he understands Cleopatra's irresistible attraction, and he disagrees. And absolutely mortal lines. "Age cannot wither her, nor custom steal her infinite variety. Other women cloy the appetites they feed, but she makes hungry where most she satisfied." All right, the more she satisfies your appetite, the more Cleopatra satisfies your desire. All right, the more she feeds that desire. Okay, so absolutely, I mean, what an imagination the great bard had. So, Enobarbus's remarks make it clear that the alliance between Antony and Octavius won't last long. It will be a very short-lived alliance, and both of them are eventually going to collide. Both of them are eventually going to come to a kind of a conflict, a kind of a heads-on collision with each other. So after his marriage, Antony calls an Egyptian fortune teller, a soothsayer. Even in Julius Caesar, if you remember, it was a soothsayer who had predicted the Ides of March, who had told Caesar to beware the Ides of March. Similarly, the Egyptian soothsayer is summoned here by Antony. And the soothsayer predicts that Octavius is going to rise and counsels Antony to return to Egypt. And he says, the soothsayer says, "Thy demon, that thy spirit which keeps thee, noble, courageous, high, unmatchable, where Caesar's is not. But near him, thy angel becomes afeared as being overpowered. Therefore, make space enough between you. He suggests that you is not healthy. Your guardian angel, all right, your demon, your protecting angel, it becomes terrified in presence of Octavius. So it's as if it's afraid of being overcome, as if it's afraid of being overpowered by Octavius's guardian angel. So it's the more distance you put between yourself and Octavius, the better. But then he's a supreme egoist, Antony. Antony angrily dismisses the soothsayer and agrees with his analysis. All right, he says, in the east, my pleasure lies. So before Antony leaves for Egypt, however, the triumvirs and the rebels meet on Pompey's galley. A galley is a war ship, all right, for a night of drinking and feasting following negotiations. And Antony has a tremendous capacity for merrymaking. He can drink like a fish, okay, and it shows that this indulgence, self-indulgence, all right, is going to lead to his downfall. Octavius is very sober. This entire scene brings out the contrast between Antony and Octavius, an extrovert and an introvert. Octavius is an observer. He's very silent, very quiet. He speaks only when necessary. He's sober, okay, and absolutely passionless, very, very cold, right? And it shows, the scene shows what an iron will Octavius has, what determination he has, although he's so young, okay, and eventually you get this foreboding as you are reading the play or watching it on the stage. You get this feeling that this kind of a determination, the Caesarian genes run in his blood. This is what made Julius Caesar a world conqueror, and this is what is going to make Octavius Caesar the greatest Caesar in Roman history. Now, as the third act begins, Ventidius, who's another of Antony's commanders, he has conquered the Parthians, and he agrees that Antony would take credit for this victory. Now, Antony is in Athens with Octavia, his new bride, and he learns that Octavius has slandered him. He has publicly humiliated him and has started a war against Pompey. Okay, so the alliance between these two triumvirs, as well as Antony's control over his own forces, over his own troops, this alliance and the control is further threatened. And Antony discovers that Octavius has imprisoned Lepidus to solidify his position. And one of Octavius's officers has now murdered Pompey. So the Caesarian threat is gone. Octavia, Antony's wife, she returns to Rome to try to repair this breach between husband and brother. Now there Octavius tells Octavia that Antony has returned to Egypt and convinces Octavia that Antony is not only preparing for war against Octavius, but he has also started seeing Cleopatra again. He hath given his empire up to a whore. And what is Octavius's response to this slight, to this insult? He begins to prepare to engage Antony in battle at a place called Actium. So in Egypt, Enobarbus tries to convince Cleopatra not to take part in the battle. And the lovers laugh at Enobarbus. Okay, and Enobarbus is also trying to convince Antony that you should fight Octavius on land, not on the sea, because Octavius is a great naval general. He's a naval admiral. He understands sea battles very well. So therefore, you should Antony should strike Octavius at his vulnerable spot on the engage him in land battles. But then they are not taking Enobarbus seriously. And Octavius has actually thrown a challenge to Antony to fight him at the on the seas of Actium. And Cleopatra claims, I have 60 sails, Octavius none better. And Antony, you know, being the kind of adventure seeker that he is not able to resist either Octavius's challenge or Cleopatra's bravado. At Actium, Enobarbus watches helplessly as Cleopatra's ships turn tail and flee the moment the battle begins. For some reason, Cleopatra's ships, they all desert the battle and run away. And what does Antony do? Antony does not stay with his ships and fight Octavius. All right. Antony also instructs his captains, his ship captains, to pursue Cleopatra to find out what has happened. And even without a shot being fired, it's a decisive victory for Octavius. So Antony is absolutely furious and mad, and he encounters Cleopatra. Cleopatra apologizes to Antony for the retreat, and of course, poor Antony, utterly in her thralls, utterly mesmerized by her, has no option but to forgive her. But then Antony sees Octavius's ambassador arrive at the court and kiss Cleopatra's hand, and she is behaving very cordially with this ambassador, of Octavius. Now Antony becomes enraged. He suspects that Cleopatra is trying some political manipulation behind his back, and he abuses Cleopatra, berates her, and orders the ambassador to be whipped. Again, Cleopatra tries her feminine charms, and the couple are reconciled. And Antony decides to stake everything on another battle. Now, Enobarbus has had enough. Although he's a bosom friend of Mark Antony, now he can't take this new Antony anymore. All right, he's so fickle. He's not at all the warrior Antony, not at all the brave Antony as he knew him. And Enobarbus decides that he has had enough of Antony's clouded judgment and makes plans to desert Antony and join Octavius. So all Antony's best friends and his supporters, they are deserting him. Now, in the fourth act, Octavius scoffs at Antony's challenge to meet him in a duel and prepares for war with confidence, knowing that many of his followers, they have defected to him. And when Antony learns of Enobarbus' desertion, he forgives his friend and generously sends gifts to him. Enobarbus is so overcome by Antony's magnanimity that he is overcome with remorse, okay, and he dies seeking Antony's forgiveness. Of course, some suggested that he commits suicide. And initially, Antony scores a victory over Octavius, but later in a sea battle and on land in the Egyptian desert, Antony's army is completely routed. Antony is furious because he thinks it's the Egyptian army which is not, martial enough, which is not strong enough to oppose Octavius. And he blames Cleopatra and accuses her of betraying him. And Cleopatra is terrified by his anger. She goes and hides in a monument. She has a monument, Cleopatra's tomb. All right, she hides in that monument and tries to regain Antony's affection by sending him a false message that Cleopatra has committed suicide. Now, she had assumed that this news would break Antony's heart, and they would repent at how Antony had misjudged Cleopatra, and then eventually she would appear and they would kiss and make up, and all will be well. All's well that ends well. But her plan disastrously misfires. When the news reaches Antony, he's absolutely ashamed. Okay, and he eventually decides to take his own life. I will overtake thee, Cleopatra, and weep for my pardon. So it must be, for now all length is torture. Since the torch is out, lie down and stray no further. I find a lot of similarities between Romeo and Juliet and another play set in Italy and Antony and Cleopatra. These are called the love tragedies of Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet, of course, was an immature play, and it was about two warring families. But that play also was about a pair of star-crossed lovers, and it ended in their tragedy. Similarly, Antony and Cleopatra is about a much more mature pair of lovers. Okay, people who are in their 30s, and Antony probably is in his early 40s. Okay, it's about a mature pair of lovers, and yet the circumstances of their deaths are so similar. Romeo believes Juliet to be dead and he kills himself. Juliet wakes up, sees Romeo dead, she commits suicide. This playful message, all right, a very playful, a very trivial message of Cleopatra committing suicide, it causes Antony to take his own life. Antony orders his servant Eros. Eros, of course, as you know, means love. Eros to stab him. But Eros is such a devout, such a loyal servant that instead of taking his own life, instead of killing Antony, he takes his own life so that he is not compelled to carry out the order. Then Antony commits harakiri, he commits suicide. He falls upon his own sword, and now he is told that Cleopatra is alive. Okay, so he requests his servants to carry him to Cleopatra's tomb, right? And so that he can acknowledge to Cleopatra that his life, his happiness, they are all inextricably bound with her, and he wants to make a demonstration. He wants to pledge his undying love for her once again. Just before he dies, Antony offers his own eulogy to his long struggle to emphasize his long struggle between desire and duty. And this is what he says: "The miserable change, now at my end, lament nor sorrow at, but please your thoughts in feeding them with those my former fortunes, wherein I lived, the greatest prince of the world, the noblest, and do now not basely die, not cowardly put off my helmet to my countrymen, a Roman, by a Roman, valiantly vanquished." In the short fifth act, Octavius hears of Antony's death and he mourns the passing of a great warrior before moving to capture his spoils, Cleopatra. His greatest prize would be Cleopatra. He sends word that she has nothing to fear from him, but Cleopatra tries to stab herself to prevent the Roman soldiers from taking her prisoner, and she is prevented. Okay. Now, Dolabella tries to placate her. Cleopatra accuses Dolabella of lying, and Dolabella admits that Octavius plans to put Cleopatra in a cage and display her in Rome as his conquest. Octavius arrives promising to treat her well if she complies with his wishes, and threatens her with destruction if she follows Antony's course. Now, Cleopatra pretends to comply, and then when Octavius departs, she tells her attendants, "He words me, girls, he words me that I should not be noble to myself." Now, Cleopatra sends for a basket of figs, and this basket of figs contains a very poisonous variety of snakes. The asp is a small snake, but like the crate, it's extremely venomous. Okay, and Cleopatra now prepares herself for death. This is what she tells her attendants: "Give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me. Now no more the juice of Egypt's grace shall moist this lip." Okay, she's directing and stage managing her own end, and Cleopatra anticipates joining Antony as his worthy wife in the afterlife. "Methinks I hear Antony call. I see him rouse himself to praise my noble act. I hear him mock the luck of Caesar, which the gods give men to excuse their after wrath. Husband, I come. Now to that name, my courage prove my title." She picks up one of the snakes and places them at her breast, and as the snake stings her, Cleopatra dies. When Octavius returns, he is absolutely shattered at the sight of the dead Cleopatra, and he speaks admiringly of her. bravest at the last. She leveled at our purposes, and being royal, took her own way. You know, implying by his words an envy of Antony and Cleopatra's passion. As I told you earlier, Octavius is a very passionless, cold, calculative kind of a person. And he envies people who can be so passionate about each other that even death they smilingly embrace. And Octavius commands, "She shall be buried by her Antony. No grave upon the earth shall clip in it a pair so famous. High events as these strike those that make them, and their story is no less in pity than his glory, which brought them to be lamented. In the contest with Rome, Egypt must lose." Okay, I told you there's this contrast between the civilized, the rational, and the technologically superior Rome with the backward, the sensuous, and the savage Egypt. So, in a contest with Rome, in Shakespeare's opinion, Egypt has to lose. The colonizer must win over the colonized. Desire, passion, human emotions, they are no match against the cold calculation for worldly power. Human frailty cannot survive an iron will. And yet, the play logically argues, the play makes the case that despite all the contradictions and clear character imperfections, who eventually wins? Who triumphs? Shakespeare suggests that Antony and Cleopatra, with all their willful self-indulgence, with all their flaws, still the purity of their love, all right, the intensity of their love, that love makes them victorious. What Octavius has gained are, material goods, land and power. But Antony and Cleopatra, because of their love and because of their willingness to embrace death for their love, all right, they have gone beyond human values. All right, they have transcended humanity. Okay, Antony and Cleopatra leave a great emptiness by their death. Octavius wins, but the world loses by the passing of Antony and Cleopatra. And Shakespeare is trying to question what makes us human, okay, even at the cost of an empire. And the play suggests that kingdoms, empires, even the world means nothing if love has to be sacrificed at the altar, right? His lovers, Antony and Cleopatra, they rise to the tragic occasion for a concluding triumph, befitting a magnificent warrior and a queen of infinite variety. Now, this is basically what the play stands for. And there are a number of themes in the play. However, I shall discuss just two. One is Antony and Cleopatra as a play of strategy, manipulation, and power. Okay, and the second, the gender roles, and especially the creation of a new feminine by William Shakespeare. Now, coming to the first topic, the first theme, the strategy, manipulation, and power theme, we see that Roman Republic, when a republic crumbles, I was seeing a lot of parallels between the present pandemic, post-pandemic world and the crumbling Roman Empire. As you are probably familiar, W.B. Yeats's famous poem, The Second Coming. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Okay, the best lack all conviction, the worst are full of passionate intensity. The idea is that of an organization, a system, a polity, okay, collapsing from the inside, collapsing from the center. And as the Roman Republic crumbles, all right, various political powers like predators, all right, like predatory birds, they struggle for control over the republic. Okay, and most of the plays in this, most of the characters in this play, they are attempting to survive. All right, they are attempting to manipulate their way to safety and power. alliances are shifting throughout the play. All right. Initially, Antony and Octavius are on the same side against Pompey. Then Octavius turns on Lepidus. Antony and Octavius turn on each other. Even the lesser, the secondary characters, they must also figure out their own strategies. Enobarbus. All right. Initially, he and Antony are inseparable. They are like alter egos of each other. But eventually, Enobarbus deserts Antony. It's like a shadow leaving you. Mahesh Elkunchwar's famous play, Pratibimb, when your own reflection disappears from the mirror. So that is how Antony feels, bereft at Enobarbus's desertion and betrayal. But Enobarbus's hope is now he has a better chance of survival, better chance of surviving with Octavius rather than with Antony. And Antony's general Ventidius, all right, he decides not to pursue the fleeing Parthians so that he can rival Antony's authority. So all the characters in the play, they are like chess players. They are planning their actions carefully, as the smallest false move can result in creating an enemy. So all this strategy and manipulation, it boils down into the personal and domestic spheres as well. Cleopatra is constantly trying to manipulate Antony, sending him a false message that she's dead, for example. Okay, and Antony is also willing to, in a sense, sacrifice Cleopatra by strategically marrying Octavius' sister, Octavia. Whether it's the battlefield or the bedroom, Antony and Cleopatra is full of plotting characters, all struggling again. They are trying to gain inches, or they are trying to gain space. Okay, trying to gain advantages, striving against each other. Okay, Octavius in this play is the only character whose plans actually are fulfilled. Plans come to fruition. But Cleopatra is the only character in the play who's able to defeat Octavius. By ending her own life, she takes control of her fate. Okay, she can't win against Octavius politically. But one thing she has complete control over is her own life. And she uses that as the ultimate weapon. Alright, she takes her own life and refuses to be taken as a prisoner of war. Octavius may have defeated Cleopatra in battle, but Cleopatra's clever endgame allows her to discover some form of victory in defeat, some power amidst the absence of power. And the last topic which I was thinking of discussing with you is gender roles. Okay, this is a play where a woman is shown to be superior than men. Now, you know that this is often the case in Shakespeare's comedies, whether it's As You Like It, or Twelfth Night, or Midsummer Night's Dream. All right, the heroine, Rosalind, Viola, Portia, they are shown to be definitely superior to men. Although, occasionally they have to disguise, they have to cross-dress as men to achieve their ends. But as I have often told my students, comedies in Shakespeare, they are controlled by the female protagonists. In a tragedy, it's the male who controls the action. But in Antony and Cleopatra, Antony and Cleopatra is the only tragedy where it's a lady, where it's a woman who's shown to be stronger than her male counterpart. And throughout the play, the relationship between Antony and Cleopatra transgresses the bounds of traditional gender roles. Cleopatra in the play appears to be more powerful, more manipulative. She's smarter. Antony is not the Antony of Julius Caesar. This Antony, in Antony and Cleopatra, the play, he appears to be much weaker. At the start of the play, he is strong. But then as the play progresses, Antony appears to become weaker and less decisive. Now he keeps fumbling, he keeps taking wrong decisions, he's unsure of himself, okay, as he spends more and more time under her sway. And his men begin to worry that he has become bewitched, all right, by Cleopatra. And one of the soldiers of Antony tells a fellow soldier that they are now women's men. All right, now we are completely subjugated by the women of Egypt. In Act 2, Cleopatra mentions a time when she got Antony drunk and they wore each other's clothes for amusement. Cleopatra wore Antony's clothes and Antony wore Cleopatra's clothes. This exchange of clothes symbolizes the exchange of traditional male and female roles that occurs in their relationship. This reversal comes to a disastrous climax at the important battle of Actium, where Cleopatra insists on fighting the battle like a man. And eventually her courage fails her and she deserts. Antony, instead of giving fight to Octavius, also turns tail and runs away like Cleopatra. The transgression of gender roles in Antony and Cleopatra's relationship becomes even clearer when we note the behavior of other characters, particularly Octavius and his sister Octavia. Octavius is a very restrained character. He doesn't drink too much, okay, and he controls his emotions. He's strong, he's brave, and he's an exemplar of what shall I say? Exemplar of traditional masculinity and a complete counterfoil to Antony. As I said, if you follow the play's graph, Antony becomes weaker. Octavius becomes progressively stronger. So Octavius, in a sense, is a counterfoil to Antony. Likewise, Octavia can also be seen as a counterfoil to Cleopatra. Octavia is loyal, she is obedient, she is subservient, and she is, a typical Elizabethan woman, something that all women desire, a very submissive and a very timid wife. Now, these figures of traditional gender roles, they ultimately win. Octavius, who's the epitome of traditional masculinity, and Octavia, who's the symbol, the representative of traditional femininity. They win. The rebels, the feminine man, Antony, is defeated and he dies, and the masculine woman, all right, the woman who imbibes the values of patriarchy and tries to defeat patriarchy, she is dead by her own hand. So Shakespeare is basically trying to establish the notion that traditional gender roles always win, just as traditional political stability always returns at the end of a Shakespearean tragedy. In Antony and Cleopatra, Shakespeare seems to tell us that traditional gender roles, they shall always triumph. However, Antony and Cleopatra, both of them, their death is very noble and it elicits sympathy and respect even from Octavius himself. The dangerously powerful Cleopatra is defeated, but the play probably represents her death less as a necessary return of power into male hands and more as a very sad, lamentable consequence of Cleopatra having power in a world not yet ready for women to wield it. She is a woman born too soon. And maybe unconsciously, Shakespeare was, this play was first performed in the year 1607. And scholars believe that the play was written maybe a couple of years earlier, around 1605. Queen Elizabeth had just died. And maybe unconsciously, Shakespeare was paying tribute to Queen Elizabeth through the portrayal of Cleopatra. Lots of similarities, both equally powerful, both equally, dominant over the male ministers and councillors and the court, and both of them much ahead of their times, visionaries. So I'd like to believe that Cleopatra, in a sense, and also you'll remember Queen Elizabeth I also had a succession of lovers. Okay, so in their philandering, in their attitude to romance, and in their attitude to grabbing the world as they find it, okay, unapologetically. There are lots of similarities between Queen Elizabeth I and her predecessor so many centuries ago, Queen Cleopatra of Egypt. So thank you, a big thank you to the organizers once again for letting me talk on this extraordinary play, Antony and Cleopatra, is probably not one of Shakespeare's most popular plays, but it is definitely one of the most complex and multidimensional plays. And I would request you to read both the plays in succession, Julius Caesar, and after that you read Antony and Cleopatra. And after you finish reading these two, please also go through George Bernard Shaw's Caesar and Cleopatra. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. And perhaps the first lecture of the series, which was conducted without PPTs. And sir, let me tell you, it wasn't needed at all. Such a wonderful explanation, and not at all needed. And I'm really thankful.
So kind of.
Sir started with the development of drama from ecclesiastical form to the historical one. That is what we have in the history of literature. Then how the Roman history inspired the historical plays during the Elizabethan age, as the writers found a lot of similarity between the Elizabethan England and the Caesarian Rome. Then about Shakespeare, that he must have attended some grammar school and he was well versed with Roman culture and Latin language. Along with it, then the English writer felt that moral, intellectual, and psychological they are more closer to the Roman history, and that is what inspired them to take the themes from Roman history for these historical plays. Now, in Cleopatra, we have a new kind of she is assertive, aggressive, and during the end, sir also brought out that perhaps she is superior to the male characters. Sir has brought out the action and contents of the play through wonderful and simple explanation of the story that will surely facilitate the memory of the students. And I thank sir for sparing his time for this series, and we have requested sir to submit around 20 MCQs, sir. You must have got that message.
Yes, I shall.
About the 20 MCQs, which will be for the comprehension study of the students. Will test what they have understood. And once again, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all the organizers, and all the best to the students. Please enjoy the rest of the lectures.
I hope, sir, they will go through the other two plays as well.
I hope they will, yes.
That is what they should do.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Panikkar and Dr. Singhal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And all the best for the rest of the series. Thank you.
Sir.
Good day.
So we close it.